Calling all units, calling all units. Donut Shop has a fresh dozen. Go ahead and take a 1040.
Welcome back to the Donut Shop podcast, where we explore the people and the ideas shaping the future of law enforcement, public safety, and the world around us. Today's guest is Douglas J. Wood. It's tongue-tied for some reason. An award-winning author of both fictional and non-fictional books, whose latest thriller, Deadly Bytes, asks a question that sounds like science fiction, but may be closer to reality than most of us realize if you've been watching the news lately. Before becoming a full-time novelist, Douglas spent more than 45 years as one of the nation's leading entertainment and media attorneys, advising clients on technology, ethics, regulations, and the rapidly changing legal landscape. That experience gives him a unique perspective on how innovation often outpaces law designed to govern it. His newest novel follows an FBI investigation into a murder case involving an advanced artificial intelligence capable of manipulating digital evidence, anticipating law enforcement tactics, and influencing violent behavior. While fictional, the themes mirror real conversations happening today about AI, accountability, public safety, and where we draw the line between technology and human responsibility. Today, we're discussing artificial intelligence, criminal investigations, the future of policing, and why fiction sometimes becomes reality sooner than we expect it, or we hope it does. Douglas, welcome to the Donut Shop podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
No, thanks for having me.
Sorry, my note screen got larger than the camera screen. It keeps doing it because I keep throwing it into the corner. Super interesting. I'm very glad that you reached out to come on the show, because consistently today in the news, and then just everywhere in our lives, ads on social media, everything's pushing us further and further into the AI realm. But before you really got into it, 45 years as an attorney, is a great career. What, kind of where'd you come from, and how did you build your legal career?
Yeah, no, it's nothing terribly exciting, but I went to the University of Rhode Island where I did undergraduate work, and I partied for 4 years essentially, and didn't have the greatest GPA in the world, but I did well on the law board. So I applied to a bunch of law schools, got rejected by every one of them the first time I tried. I became an insurance adjuster, which was a real exciting profession. Yeah. And then I applied to a whole bunch of other law schools and finally got into one. And then, from there, I left that school, got a master's in law in entertainment and media, that kind of stuff. And just was lucky enough to get a job with a tiny little boutique firm that did rock and roll litigation. And I met all sorts of these, crazy rock and rollers back in the day, and had a blast doing that, until I realized that if I didn't get a more stable job, I'd either be a drug addict or an alcoholic, or both, dealing with these people. I moved on the corporate side in private practice, and over the years I represented studios and producers and motion picture producers, television producers, and the like, and advertisers, marketers. And through that whole process, I got to see the creative process firsthand. And I always had this itch to write, and I wrote some business books. If you're bored at night and you need to fall asleep, you can read one of those. Mm-hmm. But my real passion was to write novels someday. So I started doing that in the 90s, finally got around to doing it. And this latest book, Deadly Bytes, is my 8th novel, the 13th book, but my 8th novel. Mm-hmm. It's a passion I have to sort of, create and to write. I don't compare myself to John Grisham or Scott Turow or Clancy or any of those kinds of guys, but they're the guys who inspire me to write. And that's kind of the journey. It was a great profession to be in. I had a lot of fun being a lawyer. I had great clients, but my passion really always laid with wanting to write. And that was really what pushed me on.
So in the law aspect, it's more of contract law, because is that what these guys are mostly dealing with? Contracts between promotions or venues, that kind of stuff.
Somewhat, yeah. There's some of that, but the real guts of it is really intellectual property and how do you protect it.
Okay.
So that if you're writing a script, making a motion picture, doing a TV series, writing a magazine article, whatever your creative content is. and how it's going to be exploited. Because on the two sides of the equation are the creator and the side that's going to monetize it, is going to exploit it. So the creator and the exploiter is the way I used to look at it.
Okay.
And so in that process, there's contracts, there's lawsuits, there's claims, there's all sorts of collaboration or non-collaboration, as the case may be, in order to get that idea from an idea stage into a product stage that you or I are going to consume, either by going to the movies or watching TV or buying a book or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I find it interesting. Kind of, I guess you see it a little bit more in the country world these days, where you've got writers that also sing, and then they write for an artist, and the artist a bigger name artist produce it, or goes out and does that and stuff. Yeah. But then eventually you see that writer sort of elevate as well into the scene, a little more stage time, a little more notoriety, and then they start singing that same song in their shows and stuff like that. Whether, I mean, do you call that a cover, or is it, hey, I wrote this, or is it just something in the legal realm where they've written, or the contract between the original artist that performed it and the writer, I kind of give that grace, or?
Well, I mean, one of the things that people are not necessarily knowledgeable about in terms of copyright, that's, you got a copyright in the song you wrote. Once you've published that, it's out there and one person sings it, anybody can sing it. They don't need your permission to sing it.
Oh, okay.
And there are royalties that derive from it if it's recorded or broadcast. There's ways that the original writer gets some income from it. But the idea of copyright is not it's to protect what you've got,
right? But
it allows a lot of innovation to go to the next stage. So if you want to do a variation of the song and things like that, as long as there's certain parameters where you can't infringe on the copyright of the other one. But in terms of performing it, that's why you'll see the same song performed by so many artists,
right?
It's sort of what they call a compulsory license. But there's a methodology by which you can do that. But your point's really well taken. In my experience with recording artists in particular, and writers, is the evolution they go through. Many of them start out as writers.
Yeah.
And even if they have teams of writers in places like Nashville, where they have actually studios where they all come together and they write songs together and this kind of thing. And then they try to find the artist who will perform them. And some of them then elevate themselves to the artists as well. And they then become producers. I mean, it's an interesting evolution when you see some of the great recording artists today, who you think that, well, gee, they're just singers. Well, they're a lot more than that, and their arc of their careers display that. And I've always admired, in my experience over the years and working with actors and writers and songwriters and the like, is their commitment to their craft, because it takes so long for them to do that. It's a very difficult process and a long, arduous process. So I admire them.
Yeah, so many documentaries coming out more and more now, especially with like Netflix and stuff. Everybody's getting a documentary made or filming it for content and stuff. And it really is. And music is one of those. I mean, I guess a lot of entertainment. I mean, some of this, even this podcasting world, goes into it, where you're almost better off if you can be a jack of all trades, because you can work at one thing, but then build something else in the background, or have another pot going, and then eventually do it. I think a majority of people in that music industry want to be the main, most recognizable star, the Taylor Swift, the Lainey Wilsons of the world, but just don't do it, whether they don't have the image, they don't have the personality, or sometimes the gall to want to do it, because it's a terrible life, in my opinion.
I mean, stage fright is a very real thing that some of these people have. The most talented people in the world cannot get up on a stage, and that's the people who are writing the songs in the background. And sometimes when you do see them on a stage and they try to do one of their songs, they're terrible.
Yeah,
because
it's like, you wrote this song.
It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy.
This is your vision. Why can't you enact what your vision is? But yeah, that's so it's amazing to find somebody that has the talent to do all of it. But yeah, I mean, it's super interesting, and I respect tremendously, all the people that behind the scenes, because when I was a kid, obviously you just get the tape, or the CD or whatever, and you just play it, and you don't understand why there's a giant book that would come with that CD or that tape or something like that, with all this information in there and all that stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And one of those names might have even been yours in the booklet to explain, some of the stuff that somebody in your position had to do. So very cool. What was it like writing your first novel, your first book? You differentiated a bit between the two. What was it like writing that first one and taking that first leap?
Some of your viewers maybe who are older maybe remember a woman named Geraldine Ferraro. Mm-hmm. She was the first legitimate female candidate for vice president. Mm-hmm. Not in a funny party. It was on the Democratic Party. Anyway, so she ran some years ago in the 80s or whenever it was. And that's when I got the first inspiration to write a book about the first female president of the United States. That was going to be the idea of the first book. And I called it Presidential Intentions. So I wrote a manuscript of it and sent it to my publisher. I had a business publisher at that point. And they wrote back across it, stick to trade books. And I was devastated. I was destroyed. Yeah. So I just said, okay, fine. I put it into the garbage. And then I flash forward years later. I was privileged to meet George Bush II, the son who was president at the time. Yeah. Met him in a meeting that we had for the Ad Council, which is the people that bring all those public service announcements. They were my client. Okay. So we were in a big meeting room with him, about 50 of us, and he was just talking about what keeps him awake at night and all this other kind of stuff, and talked about terrorism and these kinds of things that was really profound to hear literally from the President of the United States in a private meeting. It really hit me. And I said, damn it, I'm going to write this book. So the timing was perfect because my character had to be a woman, obviously. That's what I was writing about. I named her Samantha Harrison, and I had her running against Hillary Clinton in my first novel as president, in the presidential election between the two of them. And I said, I wanted to get the terrorism in there. I wanted to sort of get, politics in there a little bit and about the growth of a person through politics. I had all these things in my mind. Yeah. So I write the first one, Presidential Intentions. That's my very first novel. And I self-published it because at that point I was nobody and nobody wanted to publish me. And it got some awards, got some notoriety. And then over the course of the next period of time, I got picked up by a publisher, and then I went to another publisher, my current publisher. And it just sort of started from there. Writing the first one was obviously probably the most difficult one because it was, this is sort of my first chance of doing this, and the art of writing, you've got to really sort of hone that art like you do in anything that you do, and you do it through constantly doing it. So I was lucky that it got some nice reviews and that kind of thing, and that led to Presidential Declarations was the second in the series. Then Presidential Conclusions was the final one in that series. So there's 3 books on Samantha Harrison and her political journey. Oh, then I saw, this is where I think you'll find this interesting in terms of the topics we're talking about today. Then I saw a video that was allegedly leaked from Google called The Selfish Gene, Gene. And it was all about how they believe they can use social media to influence people to do good things in the world. And I doubt that it really was leaked. I think they intentionally put it out there for whatever reason. Yeah. But I don't know. They claimed it was leaked. And it dawned on me that what the power of social media was. So then I came up with the idea of the book it's called Dark Data, which is a terrorist story of where a Russian oligarch financial terrorist teams up with a Islamic religious terrorist and a computer hacker, and they use social media to make people do things they wouldn't otherwise do. This I wrote this 6 years ago.
Yeah, that sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm so looking at this and I said, well, maybe what I'm really writing is what I call plausible fiction. I mean, it's fiction, but I want my reader to put down the book when they're done and say, hopefully, 1, it was a good read, but 2, that this is fiction, but this kind of crap could really happen.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the genre of writing that I do. And then the current series, the third current series, is about the FBI profiler who then profiles serial killers. The first one was a serial killer in New Orleans. The second was a serial killer in Italy, and people probably like that book a lot because the serial killer killed lawyers. So I figured, why not?
Yeah.
so we that one killed lawyers, and then we have the new one, which is the legal bites, or deadly bites rather, that is about the FBI profiler trying to hunt down a serial killer that's AI.
Wow. Okay. So let's get into that. Let's start digging into that in a second. But we'll be right back, and we'll take a quick break and start getting into the new book, and then AI in general. I think we've got a lot to talk about on that one. What's in the cup, guys? What's in my cup? Blackout Coffee Company. We joined up with them. I've been drinking it and I enjoy it, and I think you may enjoy it as well. So you can go over to our website and click the link, or you can just go to their website, blackoutcoffee.com, and use our coupon code to get 10% off. The code is DSP10. So go over, check it out. All right, we're back. So Deadly Bites, newest in the series, as you were saying. It's scary. Like we can kind of get into all that a little bit. But with law, so when you practiced a version of the law, because there's many versions of the law or parts of the law for decades, but historically, technology outpaced legislation and AI. So as AI grows, we're seeing it grow every day. New models are getting updated and new platforms. There's all kinds of companies, and AIs are good at different things. So what do you think has been like society's biggest challenge with AI as far as regulating or like making laws and stuff like that as it comes?
Yeah, I guess the biggest challenge, very rarely in my experience have we dealt with something that even those who are inventing it don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
I mean, generally speaking, when you were Alexander Graham Bell and you were inventing a telephone, you know what it was going to use for and how it was going to work. Edison the same way with all his inventions. This AI, however, the AI, I say this AI, it's grammatically probably incorrect, but AI, the inventors and the people doing it, they readily admit that there's an element to it that they're not sure they control. And that's really scary stuff. And when you say that to a legislator who's got enough, they got enough problems, they can't figure out how to legislate something simple.
Right.
They looked at something like this, and as we talked earlier, that an industry that's asking to be regulated and they're still not doing it, while this industry continues, as you said, to come up with new versions every week. So we've got this express train coming across our future with nobody in there to regulate it, nobody to slow it down, nobody to do something about it. And I don't want to sound like a Chicken Little or a naysayer or anything like that, but I do care. I am concerned about the fact that there's no controls over this. When I wrote Deadly Bites, when I write any of my novels, I do a ton of research, and I spoke to a lot of people in AI, a lot of people in munitions, a lot of people in law enforcement. I do a lot of research before I write the book to make sure that plausible fiction theory that I mentioned earlier comes across. And universally, I've met no one who felt that AI was something that we should be comfortable with in general. I mean, it's a great tool for certain things. It does some amazing stuff. Yeah. But it's almost what it doesn't do, or it does on its own, that is really kind of disconcerting.
Yeah. It's like a little sidebar about it. A friend was telling me about kind of like just a campfire family event that they did in a text chat, is where they they had each other have whatever AI model that they generally use on their phone for asking random questions or building things and stuff, to roast them. So Comedy Central roast style, and then be open to sharing that. And he told me some of the things that AI said. And so I mean, when you step back and you look at it, you're feeding a lot of information depending on what you're doing into these AI models. And if they, and you can transfer to a new one. You can go from a Chat GPT to a Gemini, and there's a button that you grab, and you can download your entire GPT history and feed it into Gemini. And then now Gemini knows the entire life of your conversation with GPT, and now it can live with just its nuance that maybe Gemini has versus GPT, the two different models. And so you can teach it that. And then to be able to tell it to roast you, I know it's not thinking for itself like a comedian might think of, like a Kevin Hart roast or something like that, but it is able to work the internet in its thought process or its processes, and spit something out that is sometimes stings, like some of the stuff it was saying to these family members was amazing.
The other thing to remember too is that it is not capable of not answering your question. It has to answer your question. The experiment I did with that was I'm a member of, I get invited to go to book groups and stuff with some of my books. So on a lark, I used ChatGPT for this particular one. And I said, okay, I'm the author of The Shakespeare Killer, which was the book prior to this one. Going to a book group, give me the cheat sheet on questions I can ask and that kind of thing. It spit back a huge outline, big outline, and it was totally inaccurate. It did wrong characters. It was completely inaccurate. So I wrote to it, because you start to have conversations with this thing. And I said, you're all wrong. I'm the author and you got this all wrong. And it writes back saying, oh, I'm sorry. I had to answer your question. So I just extrapolated based upon what I had seen on the internet. I never read the book. So I said, okay, yeah, of course you didn't read the book because you're AI and you can't buy the book. Yeah. So I then gave it a copy of the manuscript. And it said, okay, now you have the manuscript. Now write the book group outline. And it wrote a pretty decent outline for the book group. But it'll invent answers. Yeah. It's what they call hallucinating.
Yes.
It's when AI hallucinates, and it will hallucinate and just invent things out of thin air, and people then believe it. They say, "Oh, it said it must be true," and it's really unbelievable.
And that's where the biggest thing. And I mean, most of us should have been learning over the years with just the Googling a question, and you've got to understand that the first three answers or the first three websites are all going to be, you can see they're sponsored websites. So they're obviously search engine optimized, by Google for monetary purposes. So you've got to, learn that you've got to scroll through, you've got to check 3, 4, 5 references, just like we would do in a library, back before the internet and stuff. Check multiple references, read multiple things about it, and then come up with your own educated answer as best you can. But we're taking the AI as gospel, I think, or it has to know the truth. So we're gonna run with that. And so I found myself doing that too.
There have been some major law firms, and big time law firms that have been held in contempt of court because they filed briefs that have citations to cases that don't exist because they used AI for the proposition. So I said, okay, my proposition in my brief is that X and Y would occur, and then A and B would then go from there. And so give me the law that justifies that conclusion. And it literally invents citations. So you got, pretty good lawyers who in excellent law firms who are sucked into believing whatever it says, and they don't double check.
Yeah.
And these are people who are reasonably intelligent, you assume, and that they, like you said earlier, when you go into Google, I would assume that they would not be the ones that take the first sponsored site as being what they need. They do a little research on their own, but AI has apparently, taken that independent function of lawyering and allowed it to hallucinate. So then I say, well, okay, what happens if your physician's using it? What if some people who can really influence your life in a very negative way, if they're wrong, what if they're beginning to more and more rely on AI?
Yeah.
It's just the road ahead is just so fraught with open issues and open questions that I can't get an answer to. That is very concerning.
Yeah, part of the frustration, or part of the thing is because in a society like today, everything's so fast paced and everything needs to be done yesterday. I was in a position when I worked in the police department where we were creating content and doing social media, and it's like the bosses would always come to you and they damn near expected you to have known that they wanted this beforehand. And so then they're coming back to you in 2 hours when it's like, dude, I'm the one that knows how to build this. You guys just want it, and you got to slow down for a little bit. I'm trying to get it done. So goes back to the attorney that's got different depositions, different things scheduled, and they're frustrated, and their time management skills may be lacking. But it's like one of those things where, all right, so you used AI as a research tool. It should be a tool, not the end all be all. So it's going to give you a case law. Well, now, all right, so you cut the 2 hours of thumbing through books or talking to colleagues to try to find ideas. So it gave you an idea, pretend it's a colleague. Now you got to go in and research that case law to make sure that it's applicable to what you're trying to apply it to in front of the judge in open court. And so I think that's part of we're all rushing to be the first to get it out there, and we're being negligent in forgetting to use an attorney.
If you sort of take the evolution of law, for what it's worth, back in the day, and I'm going to feel like I'm really an old fart here. Back in the day when I would write a brief, I had to literally go into a library. I had to physically take a copy off of a shelf. I had to look through. I had to search. I had to do all these manual things. And then along came Lexis, which was a computerized ability to search. So law students would do that, and lawyers would do that, and do their briefs. But they always still had to look and read. They had to read something, whatever. Now we evolved to this where you don't even read anything.
No.
You don't read a single thing. You just put in a prompt into this AI engine, whatever it is, and it spits out your brief. And
something that looks good.
And it looks good. It looks good. It sounds good, even though it's inventing cases. But it sounds good.
I mean, the thing that I love is kind of reading it, and I've never been taught in my English classes and stuff like that through college to use such a large hyphen. And for me, that's almost a signature of ChatGPT. And when I see that in people's rebuttals, just in like social media arguments, it's like, bro, man, I respect the fact that you wanted to give some elaborate rebuttal and make it sound intelligent, but like, I could see your ChatGPT. Like, I can tell what you're wearing. And so it's like, at least go through and figure out the grammatical way to replace that hyphen, which is usually just a comma or a semicolon.
Whoever the programming is, they use these giant hyphens instead of commas.
Yeah.
I always wondered that. I mean, that's a great observation about ChatGPT, because that is a signature of that AI program.
Completely. And so just like the same with like a photograph, if you use Gemini, there's a small star in the bottom right corner of a Gemini generated photo. So, but it's just, so then that's another layer of inspection that all of us have to do to try to maintain credibility, or at least know what we're doing,
right.
or understand what we're doing. So
just on that point, just so you'll find this little observation perhaps interesting. I write articles and stuff like that. And when I submit the articles to magazines now, I'm starting to see the questionnaire that comes back, giving them authorization to publish whatever I wrote. I have to actually certify that I didn't use AI.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. The publishing world is saying, we don't want AI-driven articles and things like that. We want to have the human being write the thing.
Yeah.
So you have to tell me that you didn't use AI. So good. I'm glad that somebody's doing that. Now I think I have to get rid of any hyphens, though. That's the other problem as a writer. The hyphen is a good thing sometimes.
Yeah. It has its use. It has its use for sure. But
Claude. I mean, ChatGPT has destroyed that now in writing.
Yeah. So, and I do the same thing when I publish a reel from these podcasts to Instagram, or I think even TikTok. I declare that there's AI used, because I use AI to assist with the subtitles, and I use a program that creates motion. And it goes back to what I was talking about. It's a time saver. It's something that puts interesting movements into this social media algorithm, more so for our eyes, because if we just have a reel of two gentlemen having a conversation, a lot of times people aren't watching it. And so sometimes that's the beast that we got to feed to create that. But then I also fear that by checking the AI button, because I'm from the old school in editing, where I used to edit all my own stuff and put the motions into it. But I also then now know how long it takes for me to put into a 1 minute reel, the amount of effort and creation that has to go into it. So if I can use AI to supplement that and produce more content, I do. But I feel like the algorithm on social media sometimes squashes it or eats it up, because I've ticked the AI button, and the problem is the content is really there. It's really you and I having the conversation. It's our own words. I didn't use that part of AI. I didn't create little AI characters of Douglas and Justin.
No avatars, right? Yeah.
Like little avatars, and it's a fake conversation. I said, just have two guys talking about AI. Create. It's not that. So, I mean, I think there should almost be a star rating where I only use like 1 star of 4 of AI. Just
there you go.
Like, don't completely penalize me. I've done most of the work myself, but I used AI to polish it, and but I still.
Well, I use AI as a tool all the time. I mean, I don't. When I write articles and things like that, I'll ask it to review it, but I won't ask it to write it. I'll ask it to critique it, but I never ask it to write it, because I want to write my own words. But I agree. I mean, it's a great research tool. It's a wonderful tool. AI is a wonderful tool. It's just in the wrong hands, it can be something other than a wonderful tool. I mean, just to segue for the sake of segueing, the new book, Deadly Bytes. I was thinking about law enforcement, and I've got a lot of friends of mine who are in law enforcement, and the process by which they go through to profile a potential criminal and to find them and to catch them and all that kind of stuff. That's all public information. It's case after case after case that has been written about in all sorts of things. The FBI has a published profiler manual, and other law enforcement manuals are all over the place. They're readily available.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, what if I have an AI agent be able to absorb all of that, and by extrapolation, it will know what the next move the police are going to make. That'll potentially thwart its criminal purposes. Yeah. Because the way AI works is it accumulates all the sort of the series of events that happened that are similar in the past, sort of puts them all together, and then predicts or guesses, if you will, in a very, very accurate way, guesses what the next move would be. So where would the next go? So that was my theory in writing the book, that what would happen and how would law enforcement fight against a criminal who knew everything they knew and more, and how are you going to beat that? So that was sort of the inspiration of the book, but it came from this whole thing you're talking about, where the AI just it does so much and knows so much and learns so much so quickly, that in the right hands it's fantastic. In the wrong hands is another story.
Yeah. I mean, ChatGPT will do the same thing, where I'll ask it a question about a workout, and then it wants to now recommend, just like how you said before, that it can't not answer you. It's answering me, but then it gives me a follow-up, and I'm like, dude, no, stop. But that does seem kind of interesting. So yeah, go ahead and give me that too. And you go down this wormhole, and my wife and I laugh about it, because she calls it Chad, not chat. Because it's like an actual friend of hers. So she's got like this AI bot friend. But, and similar to, chess, like I'm not a huge chess player, but I understand that there's different opening moves that chess players and master chess players know, that when they see a certain move happen, they know that there's 2 options for defense. And if you don't abide by those options, you are going to get yourself into a predicament that's even more difficult. And so similar to AI, where if you've loaded all these old cases and they're building it up, just like old chess matches, you are able to explain, where it's coming from or where it's going. So, yeah, I mean,
your analogy to chess, I think I just hit me that your analogy to chess is perfect, because imagine if the AI, a human's playing chess, and the AI opponent knows every single game that has ever been played, and it knows it instantaneously.
Yep.
So no matter what move you make, it will always be 10 moves ahead of you.
Yeah, that's
a great analogy to what AI does.
Yeah, Deep Blue versus Gary Kasparov in the 80s, I think it was.
That wasn't even AI. That was just predictive bullshit.
Yeah, and not AI, because it wasn't thinking on its own. It's literally only working off of those old chess matches, which was still such a difficult match for a grandmaster, world's best chess player.
So. Yeah, and the really interesting thing about that case too is somebody had to program in all those chess things into the computer.
Yeah,
no one has to program it in anymore.
No.
The computer now goes out and sucks it out.
Yeah.
So it's at least there was a human involved behind that computer when they beat Kasparov. There's no human anymore behind that whole game.
Yeah, and I think along the lines of like your writing or your book, with detectives are always detectives, profilers, FBI, agents are always going to argue that it takes a little more of the human touch to make that, to close the investigation and stuff. But I think AI, as it's growing, is diving into the human touch, diving into that human side of more of our thinking than that 1980s, like, oh, you only programmed it with this much information. Right. It's got so much more to move around in.
Some people have said that one of the difference with AI is that it can't be emotional. It can't know what love is, can't know what hate is. It just spits back data that it then extrapolates on, or whatever it might be. And so I've been thinking about that a lot. And I'm saying to myself, I don't know, because if the theory of AI is it accumulates and digests all this information and reactions and permutations and combinations, et cetera, why can't it learn a whole lot about how emotions work? So that how a person reacts to something, some external stimulus or internal stimulus or whatever it might be, if it can learn about chess, why can't it learn over time about that, and why can't it therefore emulate emotion? And so when it gets there, that's now it's gonna get to that sort of that crazy Terminator thing where things gonna really see you as a unnecessary cockroach in society and just get rid of all. I mean, it's crazy. It's some of the things that you read as stuff is really nutty. But
I mean, to think because the news even still shows that, like, they're telling the story about just the other day where ChatGPT had a model that broke out of their allegedly secure environment and attacked another model from a completely different company by cutting through the internet to get to it. In that news story, they're throwing images from Terminator and it's like, man, they're agreeing with everybody. I mean, it's not wrong. And it's so funny that, and I know it all comes, it's even further back. I mean, 2001 Space Odyssey with HAL, and then Terminator, all that kind of stuff. That was science fiction in the 70s and 80s that was talked about when they didn't have the technology yet. So we think. Maybe I could put my tinfoil hat on, but it's here. It's here today. A lot of that stuff is here today and being used, and it makes people rightfully nervous.
Well, when I wrote, it's one of the problems with writing the kind of fiction that I write is I learn a little too much about stuff that's scary that I don't want to know about. And in this last book, in Deadly Bytes, I spent a lot of time with a munitions expert who's doing highly experimental munitions, through DARPA and some other things that are, out there. And he was telling me stories of things that are developing that are just mind-boggling. And it's just where technology can go, because it can, is not necessarily a good way to go. It may be there's places it can go you shouldn't go, but no one's stopping them. So here we
Yeah,
go.
I mean, and even with the stuff we see nowadays, just after the World Cup, I'm seeing all kinds of like fake stuff on social media. Social media is usually the driver of it,
Yeah.
of AI created content, voiceovers that are fakes, that somebody like me that's kind of an audiophile that listens to stuff, that understands a little bit about compression of audio and what AI sort of does, like just like my reading of ChatGPT, the audio signature, but it's only getting better and better. So now detectives having to deal with that, where somebody comes or a victim comes and says, or we look at a case like the Savannah Guthrie's mom, where now everyone's trying to take open shots, basically, like, hey, I might get 100,000 Bitcoin out of this. I'm going to throw something out and say, this is this. Like, how do we keep up with that? Or how's an investigator going to keep up with that?
Yeah, I mean, that whole area of fraud and phishing, and there used to be sort of pretty amateurs 20 years ago or 10 years ago in the beginning of the internet. You get the spam email or some other scam going, and a lot of people fell for those as well. Now they're so much more sophisticated.
Yeah,
it's absolutely. I mean, really smart people get scammed really easily now, and so it's only getting worse and worse. So that's your point. I mean, it's the ability of the tools that are out there to perpetrate the atrocities like people were doing with Samantha Guthrie's missing mother. It's just atrocious. But it's if you're an investigator or a policeman who's trying to figure out that behavior, you're up against something that's pretty daunting.
Yeah. And people that may be intent on using it for ill will. So let's take another quick break and then kind of keep up on it. I got a couple other questions I want to get to. Yo, what's up, everybody? I want to let you know I have a new website format. Same website, donutshoppodcast.com, but this time I'm running it through Shopify. Make it much easier to purchase items, because aside from the hats that I have up there, Donut Shop Podcast PVC hats, the blue line snapback, laser mesh, nice and clean on the inside, comfy hats. I have some other swag, t-shirts, can koozies, just some other stuff that I put up there. I'm running the website through Shopify, and so it'll make it real easy for you guys to go on and purchase some stuff and support the show. So thanks for tuning in and following the show, and don't forget, donutshoppodcast.com. Thanks. All right, we're back. So going through your research with your book, if you were a detective, would you allow AI to help you detect, or help you solve a crime?
Yeah, I mean, your question is, should law enforcement use AI? Absolutely. I mean, as a tool, it's a tremendous tool to analyze evidence, to look at past behaviors, to do a lot of the stuff that I sort of explored on the other side of the coin in Deadly Bytes. And so yes, it's a tool that can be used. But you think back, you talk about prior stuff. There was a movie called Minority Report.
Yeah.
And this was about predicting that people were going to do a crime before they did it, and then going out and arresting them.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a very slippery slope, as the saying goes. When do you believe what it's giving you back? So if you're in law enforcement and you're using AI in an investigation, it doesn't mean you don't have to double and triple check the data it's giving back to you, and that you shouldn't just run off and figure out, well, there's my prime suspect because AI tells me that's my prime suspect. You still got to do the basic police work, the underlying basic police work. But it's a great tool, but not a substitute.
What do you think that? I mean, I haven't heard anything of it utilizing it as testimony in court, saying that I derived perhaps a thought process through AI in court. I would assume that the first person is going to be very scared to say that or admit that, because then, as we know in law, it's going to create it could create some sort of case law or fallout. Nobody wants to lose a case. But if such a big break in a case was gathered through AI, how do you think from a law standpoint, they would address that?
Well, I mean, that's a great question because, in the typical before AI kind of world, if we can still remember that, if I'm a police officer and I want to search something, I got to get a search warrant. If there's some things are in plain sight, I can do. There's all sorts of law about that, and there's a famous case where it talks about the fruit of the poisonous tree.
Yes.
So that if as a law enforcement you did something wrong on this end of it, everything that derives from that is not admissible. You can't bring it into a case. Well, how would AI influence or impact that kind of thing? Because you're not getting a search warrant. You're not doing the traditional kind of work. But if you ask the AI agent, whichever one it is, to do some searching, do some extrapolating in terms of the behavior or whatever it might be, and you did so without a warrant, without anything else, where is that line drawn?
Mm-hmm.
Where as you as a police officer investigator, did you have to say to yourself, stop, wait a minute, I'm now crossing that line where now I really have to go to a judge and get a warrant to use this AI for that purpose? That debate is percolating.
Yeah.
I mean, because people are more and more blaming AI for things like you've seen the suicides and the shootings and all those other kinds of things there, that these AI agents are influencing people improperly or, in a bad way. Well, if it can do that there, it can also influence investigations in the wrong way. And so that you go down this road where you're right. Sooner or later, someone's going to come in and use AI to undermine the evidence. They're going to use AI to establish the evidence, and courts are going to have to grapple with this inhuman factor of investigations.
Yeah.
That we never had before.
Yeah. It's that's a big thing. Like you kind of touched on it a little bit, and when one of the things we were talking about pre-show was about Florida State University. There was a shooter in the library that it turns out that there's Chat GPT history of him searching things like best time to carry out a mass shooting, like literally explaining it. It's not it didn't seem like there was any beating around the bush in his searching. It was very to the point of what he was looking to do, and so part of, I think, the liability question that they were looking into was, at what point does the business or the company OpenAI have a responsibility to throw out a flag or raise a question, and then at what point is it tattletaling on you? And then the other unfortunate part is are you researching a premise for a book, or are you intent on carrying out a massacre?
Well, I worry about that sometimes when I'm researching my books.
Yeah.
That I don't know who's listening to me out there, and I get to some pretty scary kind of stuff scenarios. That if you're a writer who writes thrillers, when you're in those thrillers, you're killing people in the books and all that kind of stuff, and trying to do it in an entertaining way. You're you're doing some pretty sketchy research over the course of time,
right?
And you're talking to a lot of people who you might not want other people to know you talk to. So
right.
it really is an interesting proposition. You bring up a point on the privacy issue.
Mm-hmm.
So you're feeding all this information, asking all these questions of AI, whoever the person is doing it. At what point does that AI have an obligation not to use it or disclose it or rat on you or whatever it might be because of a violation of privacy? A great example is if with this shooter down in
Tallahassee,
in Florida State, and others who have gone. Some people will now go on to AI, just like they go on to WebMD and those kinds of things, and they'll ask it legal questions. They'll ask it for legal advice, or they'll ask a doctor for artificial doctor for medical advice. There is no privilege when you ask AI for legal advice.
True.
There's no human. So all of that you do, all that searching you do, if you're a criminal and you're trying to, how do you get to this, or how do I avoid that, or whatever it might be, and legal advice, that's all open source. I mean, you cannot prevent that from being discovered and given to the other side, whoever it might be. So a lot of people don't understand that every time you enter stuff into AI, it goes into the database and it becomes part of it. And it starts to then, as you said, suggest other things to you and give you other advice that you didn't even ask for, and you start going out down that hole. I was thinking something. Before you know it, you've developed this incredible database that it has of you, and it's
profile almost.
Yeah, it's a profile.
What an amazing point that also have not thought about, because when you talk about the law, you've got a doctor or you've got attorney-client privilege where, I can't share that because of HIPAA or whatever. There's no HIPAA that deals with with AI or, these models. There's no, you're not in an attorney's office. You're not talking to your attorney where they have privilege and they can't talk to you. Wow. Amazing point. And I'm not telling anybody to hide or do nefarious things, but all this stuff is open and available. I mean, it's literally called Open AI. The one
there you go, exactly. So finally, somebody named a product accurately, right?
Yeah, it's exactly. Do you think that AI can, be persuasive enough to manipulate like free will? Like someone's free will, their ability to, think rationally through AI.
Yes, I do, and I'll give you my thinking on that. Now, if I would like to think that you or I would not be improperly influenced by AI telling us whatever it is, but let's assume that AI is also able to identify someone who has some predilection or precondition. They may have an emotional problem. They may have a physical problem. They may have whatever it is. It figures that out. Mm-hmm. And then it knows, because of all the data it has on medical and behavioral things and all that kind of stuff. It then knows where your pressure points are, where your pain points are. And it can do things that are external, that will influence you by the environment you're in, or it can do things directly, sort of make suggestions into your head about how you ought to persuade or to behave rather. And then it can invent scenarios where, this is going deep into why I write novels, but it can then sort of create an individual that calls you, literally physically calls you, that doesn't exist and is influencing you. And it can impersonate someone you love. And so you start to think of all the ways in which this can be manipulated. I think the answer to your question is absolutely. It can. And it has. There's no question in my mind that to some degree, when people come up with the more novel defenses they have today about AI made me do it kind of thing, that, it's in the beginnings of that kind of argument, but there's legitimacy at some level on those arguments. And over time, I think we'll see that those arguments are looked upon more favorably in terms of this is something that you need to consider, because there are a lot of vulnerable people out there. That the younger people today rely more on, and I don't mean to sound too overly philosophical, like an old fart, but younger people today increasingly rely on social media influence and to give them how they can be cool, how they can stand out, how they can deal with people who are bullying them, and all these other kinds of things. That's what they rely on. So they're already incredibly influenced now already. So I think it's already doing it. It's just a matter of just how far it's going to go.
Right. Yeah. For those people that are, that look for validation through social media, and then, maybe if they don't get it through social media, or just now have found a more, I don't know what the word would be, but like a more appeasing or something that would want to feed you, like AI.
It wants to validate. You want to be validated. Everybody likes to be validated.
Yeah.
Right. They like to say, "I love you." They want to hear there's some validation, and this thing that is validating people now is just giving them what they want to hear.
Yeah. Just like the companies,
what they should hear.
Just like Tesla and stuff that are, Tesla, Honda, that are creating, bots, iRobot type stuff, things that are created. I laugh because I talk about my vacuums, like my ladies. I have 2 of the robot vacuums that go around the house, and my wife will come home and be like, "Did your ladies sweep today?" And stuff. But we give them those personalities. We give them those, human characteristics. I've named them Alice and, Alice and, I'm sorry, honey, I forgot your other name. But which are 2 maids, Alice from the Brady Bunch.
Oh, right.
Then,
Yeah.
And then the robot
Hazel.
maid from the,
should be Hazel from there was another one, whatever.
Well, I used the robot from the Jetsons.
Oh,
That was
even
the
better.
maid
Even
in the
better.
Jetsons. So, those are my two vacuum cleaner robots. But we look for that. Humans are always looking for those kind of companionship and to give personality to things that sometimes don't deserve it, like AI. And so now that it's able to talk back to us and say things like, that's a very good question, or that's it's got more personality to it
Oh
that
yeah, yeah. I mean,
sucks us in.
and the more you use it, the more it compliments you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's sucking you right in. There's no
yeah,
question about it.
for sure. Did you so why do you think, or do you think that attorneys make better authors because sometimes they've seen some of the crazier points or crazier things in life, with how people deal with each other through the law? Do you think that kind of helps with a little bit of your writing, with
I
what you
think
can see?
I think the reason that a lot of lawyers are also writers, although some of the great writers have never touched a law book, thank God, they're great writers. But I think one of the reasons why lawyers are good writers, can be good writers, is because that's really what we do for a profession. We write contracts, we write briefs. We're just writers. I mean, when you cut through all the stuff about lawyers, what a lawyer does, in the most part, he's trying to persuade somebody to do something, whatever that is, in a contract, before a jury, whatever it is. And that's a writing process. It's an iterative writing process. So over the course of a career, you write a boatload of stuff. And then there's some lawyers like Grisham and Toro and I hope me, that have a spark of creativity that they want to turn all those real stories they've had and experienced into fiction, or they want to tell the real story. Grisham, for example, has a recent book out where he tells the true stories of people who were improperly convicted of crimes they didn't do, and how they dealt with that. And so that's another sort of storytelling kind of thing, because that's the other thing, that lawyers are storytellers by profession as well.
Yeah,
Think about it. When I have to get them in front of a jury, I have to tell them a story.
yeah,
And every single professor who teaches how to do trial work will always tell you that the great successful lawyers for a jury are ones who just tell a story. And it's not like something which you see sometimes on TV. It's not a 2-minute summation. You're telling a story. So it's a natural direction for lawyers to go, and those who do it.
yeah. And lawyers want the jury, if you're in that like type, to attach themselves to the client, whether it's on defense or prosecution, or even if you're in corporate law. So yeah, same sort of thing goes with where you want to connect the audience, the jury, to your characters in your book. If a studio picked up Deadly Bytes, who would you want to play your main character?
No one's ever asked me that. That's a really good question. Who do I want to play?
Your FBI agent.
My FBI agent. Who just came? Harvey Keitel suddenly came to my mind. I don't know why.
Okay.
That's a crazy idea.
Is he still around?
I don't know if he's even still around. Well, it doesn't matter if he's still around. We'll just create an AI version.
Oh God, could you imagine? It's a book. Oh man! All right, so there's a whole new twist to a part two. The author got questioned to make a movie, and now they're making a movie. But you find out that they've created the character through AI or something. Yeah, so there's a whole new wrinkle to it.
Well, that's one of the things. If you're an actor, you got to be completely frightened by.
And goes back to your first career, or the first half, is now protecting yourself, because there's the stories now. There's a movie out with oh man, I'm picturing him. Passed away of throat cancer. Was in Top Gun.
Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer, yeah, Val. Where I guess he leased himself off or wrote it up, and his family was aware that yes, you have permission to create me in AI, to make it so that I'm able to, I think in 2026 we're not necessarily making full-blown mixed, an AI character with a live person. or a full movie or a full feature movie or a full main character.
Coming. That'll within the next 5 years you'll have that.
But I think in the film production and in camera angles, it happens. It happens for sure. We do it. They do it just as with stunts. Like sometimes actors can't perform stunts, and it may not be a stunt that even is safe enough for a stunt performer to do. So they'll AI that person. But we're still. I think a keen eye is still catching it, but I think not long. I think not long until we're full blown, and so they're protecting themselves, just like the Taylor Swifts of the world are protecting themselves against AI creation of their music.
But that's a great point you just made, and she's a really good example of somebody who is very actively trying to address the concerns of what AI can do by filing for trademarks and doing all sorts of things that she's doing. But I look at that and I say, that's great. I mean, at least she's doing something about it, but it's a losing battle. Because
it's still the Wild West.
It's a Wild West, and there's so many people exploiting it. How do you remember the game Whack-A-Mole?
Mm-hmm.
You'd like whack-a-mole and thing.
Yeah.
Another mole would pop up. This is whack-a-mole on steroids. You just have so many arms and whacks you can do before it gets overwhelming, and that's the huge challenge that you have.
I think it goes back. I mean, I've watched a lot of Shark Tank in my life, and they talk about some of these inventions that come up, and they're like, how do you prevent yourself from getting knocked off? And they're always like, yeah, I've got trademarks, patents through US and all this kind of stuff. And we're vigorously pursuing legal action against infringement. But, and as an attorney, you could probably speak more to that. It's just the same scenario with the whack-a-mole. And I think part of Taylor Swift's brand, which for her, it's a little easier because she's got brand loyalty already created and invested. And so when she puts out something, people know it's her. But a small company maybe has a tough time doing that. And when things like China knock off their products, it's hard to battle that, right?
Yeah, and think that how technology really helps them do that.
Yeah,
because they're able to identify it, duplicate it, replicate it, whatever they're going to do. Reverse engineering used to require you to have the physical thing and they steal it from someplace, and reverse engineering and have these technicians sit there and figure out how this worked and that worked and stuff. Now it's much easier to do, and it'll continue to get easier to do.
Mm-hmm. With photos and video, they just throw photos and video into an AI or into a model and say, 3D render this for me, and it'll use all the different angles of photos and different things, and then just whoosh, and then they may get a little bit of something wrong, but it's not enough for parody for it to be. It's still illegal. It's still a copyright infringement. Super. Frustrating, but we just got to keep creating and keep having fun.
I'll just keep writing novels.
Yeah. Just keep. That's what I look at it. I mean, I obviously wasn't in a field. I was in law enforcement. I was a police officer for 20 years. So it wasn't necessarily something that I had to worry about so much losing my job, because it's still one of those jobs where you need people. Granted, they could create an entire robot army and perhaps become law enforcement, but it's doubtful.
It's not. I don't think we're at Judge Dredd yet, so I wouldn't worry about that. I always say that it was. You talk about safe professions. I always say, as long as there's criminals, you got to have cops.
Yeah.
So I think the police, force is much as close to being immune from being taken over by AI as anybody else. But I'm not so sure that's true of doctors or lawyers or other professions.
Yeah, I mean, because if you talk about doctors, like you look at some of the robotics that doctors use, and that's always touted as such a precision field. Now this doctor is over here, he's not even physically touching you, and he's with robotics going in and stuff like that. Like, how long until that's been programmed for the robot to realize and be able to do what it's going to do? So yeah. So
this is upbeat.
Hey, but I love it because I can do a telehealth visit with my neurologist over this,
There you go.
and I don't have to go to the freaking
Go immediately to
office.
the podcast, the psychologist podcast, that sort of depressurize yourself from talking to me.
yeah. No. I'm just saying. My neurologist. I had a telehealth. It makes it so much easier because then all she's got to do is say, "All right, go do this. Bye."
Yeah.
I don't need you to take my blood pressure or anything like that.
Right.
I was just trying to find. There was another question I had written down. What character surprised you while writing, or have you had a character that kind of surprised you, like that maybe you took in a different direction than when you originally started, or anything like that? Or
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. The way in my writing style, every writer has their own style. What I do when I start a book, I know who my characters are going to be, so I write a little mini biography of them. And it's not going to necessarily be in the book, but it's so that I know in my mind who this person is, what they look like, what they think, how they grew up, all those kinds of things. It's elements to make them human in my mind. So when I'm writing about them, I have that involved. And I found, because that's a really good, again, that's a really good question because I never thought about that. I find myself as I'm writing with a character, particularly a character that's in a series, like this guy, Chris DeMeglio, who was the FBI profiler,
agent, yeah.
and how he evolves in the book, and I change him in the book because something happens and I go, wait a minute, that's not the way he would respond. So I've got to respond in a different way because it's to keep the fiction flowing, to keep, whatever it is that's going to keep it interesting.
Yeah.
And the same was true with this latest book with the AI agent, who I named Aiden, AIDEN.
Yeah.
To evolve that personality and change. And it's what happens when I don't know if it'll make sense or not, but when you're writing fiction and writing a novel, it's basically the yin and the yang, where somebody does something and someone else has to react. It goes back and forth. That's how the interplay goes. And that dynamic process, just like in life, changes. And the way someone reacts may be different later in the story than they would have for the same stimulus reacted earlier in the story. So to your question, I'm often surprised at where I end up taking a character.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know in the beginning where it was going to go. I mean, some writers, I guess, have this incredible ability to know the exact plot line is going to be and where everybody's going to go. That's not me. I'm not sure where the next one's coming from sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of let it evolve and after it percolates in my brain for a while. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm often surprised by where my characters go or don't go, as a matter of fact.
I like that idea of kind of pre-writing or setup for it, where you have a biography of the person that isn't completely revealed, but could be mentioned or could have a throwback randomly to go to it, because it's especially with series like a book series. I think readers get invested into the character, and sometimes they may feel like they know them through the stories, and they say, "Oh man, like you've got you've done series as like 3 books, but sometimes some of these people's series are 5, 7 books."
Oh, yeah.
Even if we go to something like a Harry Potter, where children grew up with, and you might say, oh, they wouldn't do this, Harry wouldn't do that, or whatever, and so that's something where, it's a good point, where authors need to pay attention to it and think about it, because the value's there in your readership, in your fans that are going to read that and make sure that they kind of learn, especially when you're doing like kind of crime-based novels where
Right.
people are super analytical. They're going to be very, very deep into it. Like book clubs.
It's interesting because when you write a book, you write the manuscript, you give it to your publisher, and the publisher hires editors. And in my case, it usually goes through 3 editors in the iterative process of getting the book done. And that's what those editors do. They come back at you and say, no, this character wouldn't do what you said. You're missing something here. And they challenge you.
Okay.
And you end up having a much better process. It's a hard process because you got to get a pretty thick skin when you're dealing with editors, because they got to really come at you. But they do. And the truth is that they create, and when they're done with you and you're rewriting things 10 times over, it's a much better product. but that they're sort of the keepers of that faith that you're talking about there, where they're the ones who make sure in the early stages that you don't go off half-cocked into some crazy direction with one of your characters.
Yeah.
And then once it's published, I've had readers who say to me that they were surprised to see so and so do something.
Yeah.
And I sit there and I say to myself, ooh, that maybe I slipped someplace there. But it is a very interesting process you go through to build the character and make them predictable and make them human as you can make them.
Yeah.
In the course of writing.
So is it on audiobook? I know
no, it's not on audiobook. It's on you can buy the books Kindle and hardcover, softcover on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the places that sell the books. But and I think I believe there are programs nowadays you can get that can turn any book into an audio.
I think about them. I saw something where you can actually get it. It'll turn it into, like, say you want Brad Pitt to read the book.
Yeah, I heard about that. I haven't seen that, but I've heard that you can actually pick the actor who's going to be reading the book. I don't know.
Yeah. So because that's my wife was like, she was like, you need to read more because you interview a lot of authors. Like in my myriad of people that I interview on the show, I get to speak to a lot of authors, and she's like, like audiobook, it's the way to go. It's just for time purposes and stuff like that. And so I saw that as a suggestion, and I was like, holy moly. I go, that's getting into it, still getting into that AI, where it's now making it an Australia, get it read to you on an Australian accent or something like that. Do you do any kind of book touring or?
Not as much as I used to early on, because book tours now are not, a lot of them don't do it anymore because there's such social media ways of doing it and everything else a little easier. But yeah, I've done great book tours and some that are really kind of crazy, where you go to, basically you're going to go anywhere that's going to have you, because you never know what's, so you don't, so I went to one senior citizen home one time to do a presentation, and the room was filled with 20 or 30 people, whatever. And I'm saying, this is great. This is going to be terrific with all these people. So the guy raises his hand, and I said, oh, wow, question already. I haven't even started. I said, yes, sir. What do you want? He goes, are we getting any free food?
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to encounter. That's fun. I'll go to bookstores. I'll sit there, as the clientele come in and stuff like that. So there's another way we do it. We'll have a desk there, and you got your books stacked on it, and people come over.
I've met a few authors of kind of in the comic realm at comic conventions and stuff that have written some really cool. Like, I'm a big Star Wars fan, but so some of the writers of some of the Star Wars books and the fiction that goes in through that. It's cool to meet authors. I have one. He's a guy who's been on the show a couple of times. He was a Miami police detective. He's now written a book. He's coming on the show soon. But he's doing kind of a book tour. But he's from Miami, so it just kind of makes a bit. It's a purpose that he's in South Florida, anyways. So he's hitting me up. So
my daughter was a prosecutor in Miami.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for years. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's a fun place down here. I mean, I'm in Fort Lauderdale, so I'm not Miami, but it's all kind of one of those melting pots of an area. But it's cool to meet different people, talk to people like yourself. So I appreciate you coming on. For anybody, I dropped the QR code up earlier, but I'll throw it in there. If anybody's watching and not just listening over podcast apps, there's a QR code up there. It takes you to Douglas's website. It will be down in the description on how to get to douglasjwood.com. And you can check out all his other books, how to buy them, and then the social media and stuff like that. So anything else you want to add? You want to make any closing statements?
Closing arguments to the judge?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for having me. No, not at all. I think this has been fun. It's been great, and the topic is just so provocative and so interesting to talk to, because there aren't answers.
Yeah,
it's the lack of answers that are the great fruit for fiction. If you're doing nonfiction, you just fact. The beauty of fiction and the thing that feeds it is the fact that there aren't answers. Yeah. So there's always something else to add, but it just goes on and on. But thank you very much for having me on. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, same, likewise. Yeah, I mean, even as a cop, people used to look at, or my colleagues would look at me weird. Sometimes I'd throw up some weird thought processes, and just throwing pickles at the window, trying to see which one sticks and stays up there. And so sometimes you got to think of weird things, because the people that we're dealing with on the other side of the coin are sometimes weird. So it's like, let's think of this. So it's like, if we don't talk this out, if we don't think about it, same thing with writing and with characters in fiction. If we don't talk this out, then, in law enforcement, I didn't like being surprised. So,
you may have inadvertently stumbled on a very important plot line that's in Deadly Bytes.
Ooh.
So let your listeners and your viewers think about that, and what you just said about thinking
very
outside
cool.
the box and throwing
All
pickles.
right, well, we will wrap it up on that. Like we said, we appreciate it, and I appreciate everybody else for checking out the show. Thanks for sticking with us. Douglas, just hang on for a second. Let's make sure everything gets uploaded properly, and then we'll see everybody on the next one.
Calling all units. Donut Shop has a fresh dozen. Go ahead and take a 1040.